I'm Natalie Cross, 36, skimming through the final pages of a corporate acquisition deal in a sleek Seattle high-rise when my phone buzzes. A new text flashes on the screen from my father. "Stay away from the reunion. We're done here." 14 words. 2 decades of transactional love summed up in a cold dismissal. I stare at the message for a long moment before replying with one word: understood. The CFO sitting across from me doesn't notice the shift behind my composed expression. But in that moment, I decide to remove myself as guarantor on my father's $1.5 million small business loan. Before I share how that decision flipped everything upside down, tell me where you're tuning in from and hit subscribe if you've ever had to walk away from family who only valued your utility. I grew up in Edina, Minnesota, a wealthy suburb where appearances were everything. Our family home, an expansive white-columned colonial on a manicured lot, was the envy of the neighborhood. To outsiders, the Cross family looked picture-perfect. My father, Gerald Cross, owned a boutique construction firm, and my mother, Lorraine, curated our image like a brand manager. Our lives revolved around silent expectations. I learned early on that love was given in exchange for performance. "Natalie, stand up straight," my mother would whisper during Chamber of Commerce fundraisers. "Natalie, your internship at the governor's office is fine, but Eric just closed a startup round," Dad would add. My older brother, Eric, charming, entitled. And forever, the golden boy was always the benchmark. I was the serious one. The one who asked why, who read ethics textbooks for fun, who didn't care about optics. I was told the world didn't reward fairness. "Natalie, that's not how success works," became Dad's mantra whenever I questioned his deals. When I was 13, I won a national writing competition. A local reporter wanted a feature story. My mother booked a family brunch at the same time. "The Cross family is always aligned," she said, tugging at my curls until my scalp stung. The newspaper photo, Eric was centered, grinning. I was off to the side, barely mentioned. Years later, when I got into Columbia Law, no one threw a party. Not even a card. But now things are different. Because this time, I'm not showing up to be used. University of Washington's Foster School of Business would keep you closer to home, my father said. But we all knew what he meant, closer to the family business. So when I got into Columbia Law with a partial scholarship, his reaction said it all. "We'll cover the rest," he finally agreed, "but we expect that education to benefit Cross development in the long run." I didn't let it. Instead, I worked 2 campus jobs and stayed on campus during breaks, picking up extra shifts at the campus legal aid center while my classmates went home. When I did visit, dinners were minefields. Eric just signed the Lakeside contract. Dad would beam. Then a pause. "Natalie, can you pass the salt?" My achievement scholarships, moot court victories. Dean's List barely registered in comparison to Eric's newest real estate conquest. After graduation, while Eric slid effortlessly into a VP role at Cross Development, I took a position at Kessler Hart & Lowe, a top law firm in Chicago. My parents showed up to my law school graduation, snapped a few pictures, then left early for a cocktail fundraiser Eric was hosting. Chicago is so far away. My mother sighed when I told them about my job offer. "There are excellent firms in Seattle, Natalie. This is the opportunity I worked for. And your brother is working for what really matters, family," my father replied. But in Chicago, I finally exhaled. My apartment was modest, but every piece of furniture was mine. I wasn't Gerald Cross's daughter. I was Natalie, associate counsel with a nameplate and clients who respected my opinion. Then, I met Marcus Rivera at a nonprofit fundraiser. He taught literature at a public high school and mentored low-income students preparing for college. He was warm, grounded, and disarmingly real. 6 months later, I brought Marcus home to Seattle for Thanksgiving. The tension started immediately. A teacher my mother echoed, lips pursed, after Marcus stepped out to take a call from a student. "Natalie, you could have your pick. Why settle for someone so limited?" "He's not limited. He's making a difference." "At what salary?" my father asked, scoffing. "How exactly does he contribute to your future?" "Not everything is about money," I said. "Spoken like someone who's never had to worry about it," he replied. The irony stung. I'd funded my education myself. By dessert, All conversation had shifted to Eric's new girlfriend, Mallory Grant, daughter of a Washington state senator. My parents asked about her political ties, then turned to Marcus and asked which bus he rode to school. That night in my childhood bedroom, Marcus held me as I cried. "They'll never really see me," I whispered. "No matter what I do." "Then that's their loss," Marcus said quietly, brushing a tear from my cheek. "Because I see you, Natalie. You're extraordinary." We left Seattle the next morning, Thanksgiving, cut short by 24 hours. At the door, my mother offered parting wisdom. "Think about your future, Natalie. Eric is already VP and dating someone with political influence. You're 36. You're not getting any younger." Back in Chicago, I buried myself in work. When I made senior associate, the youngest in my firm's history, it should have been a triumph. But when I called to share the news, my mother just said, "That's nice, dear. Did you hear Eric and Mallory are engaged? They'll marry at the governor's estate in Olympia next summer. 3 years ago, I got a call from my father. He needed a favor. Cross Development was launching a luxury lakeside community, and the bank was requesting additional collateral for a $1.5 million loan. Your credit score is excellent. Natalie," he said, "your family. We need your signature." Against Marcus's advice and my instincts, I agreed. Family helps family, Dad had added, completely unaware of the irony. That was the only time he ever acknowledged my personal success, when it benefited him financially. The final fracture came just 3 weeks ago at what should have been a joyful dinner. Eric and Mallory had announced they were expecting the first Cross grandchild. My parents rented out the rooftop garden of a luxury hotel in downtown Seattle. Marcus and I flew in just for the evening. Natalie, my mother, greeted me with 2 air kisses. "That dress is interesting." Then she frowned. "Didn't I send you the color palette for tonight?" "You didn't," I replied, already bracing for the criticism. "Well, everyone else managed," she said, gesturing toward a sea of soft rose and champagne outfits. "At least you're here?" She smiled thinly. "Eric thought you might be too busy with that." What was it? The Wallace merger. The Wallace merger, a billion-dollar acquisition that could fast-track me to partner, reduced to a passing annoyance. During dinner, they doted on Mallory's prenatal plans and Eric's nursery ideas. My role: smiling politely, fielding questions about Marcus's pension plan, and silently counting the minutes until dessert. The next generation of Crosses will have quite the legacy my father declared champagne flute held high. Eric has just become the youngest senior partner at Cross Development. The Grant connection has already brought in 3 high-profile contracts. And now, our first grandchild. Around the table, everyone applauded. Marcus gently squeezed my hand under the linen. He knew how many nights I'd stayed late at the firm, preparing for my own senior associate promotion. My family had acknowledged it with the same energy one might use to comment on the weather. Natalie Mallory said suddenly, flashing her picture-perfect smile beneath the restaurant's glittering chandeliers, "Will you and Marcus be joining us for the family reunion next month?" I blinked. "Family reunion?" I asked. She tilted her head, confused. "For the feature in Seattle Metropolitan, 3 generations of local legacy families. It's at the Lake House. 4th of July weekend." A chill crept up my spine. "I haven't heard anything about that." The air at the table shifted. My mother cleared her throat. "Didn't we mention it?" Her voice coated in feigned surprise. "It must have slipped my mind. We've been busy with baby plans and, well, it's all moving quickly." I looked to my father, who suddenly seemed deeply invested in peeling his lobster tail. That night, as Marcus fetched our coats, I passed the hotel lobby and caught voices. I paused. "We thought it best not to have Natalie and her teacher at the reunion," my father was saying. "The Grants are bringing the governor, and the Merrick's son from Goldman Sachs is flying in. We need the right atmosphere." "But she's family," Eric's voice replied, tentative. "Shouldn't she be there?" "Your sister chose another path," my mother said smoothly. "We support her, of course. But this is about legacy. She's made it clear where her priorities lie. And we've already told everyone she's busy with work." I stepped back into the shadows, heart tight. Minutes later, Marcus found me staring out at the Seattle skyline, lights glittering across the bay. "Ready to go?" he asked. They're ashamed of us, I whispered. They've been lying. About the reunion. About me. Marcus wrapped his arm around my shoulders. Their shame, he said, has nothing to do with you, and everything to do with them. Back in Chicago, I dove into the Wallace merger, 80-hour weeks a welcome escape. Then the announcement came. I had just sealed the Wallace merger, landing our firm the largest client of the fiscal year. My managing partner, Patricia Lang, called me into her glass-walled office that afternoon. "Natalie, this is exceptional work," she said, sliding a folder across the desk. "The partners are impressed. We're putting you on the early track for partnership consideration." For a brief, shining moment, I felt light, proud. My hand drifted toward my phone, instinctively ready to share the news. But I stopped mid-reach. What was the point? Any excitement would be met with tepid approval, then instantly redirected to Eric's latest real estate coup or Mallory's maternity updates. Instead, I called Marcus. He was ecstatic. His joy surged through the phone like sunlight. "Let's celebrate tonight," he said. "You've earned this, Natalie. Every bit of it." Later, at our favorite rooftop bistro in Chicago's West Loop, I swirled my wine glass and stared at the skyline. "You know what's strange?" I said, spooning up the last bite of creme brulee. "I've spent my entire life chasing my parents' approval, and I don't think I've ever really had it." Marcus reached across the table. "Maybe it's time to stop chasing it," he said. "You're extraordinary, with or without them." The next morning, while sipping coffee before work, I noticed a post from my cousin Alyssa on Instagram, a boomerang of embossed envelopes and gold foil trim with the caption, "Cross Family Reunion Invites are here." Everyone had received one, except me. Later that day, I was in a critical meeting at Kessler Hart and Lowe, reviewing final prep for the Wallace signing. The conference room buzzed with senior partners and analysts. My slide showing projected revenue gains was on screen when my phone buzzed against the wood grain table. Normally, I'd ignore it, but my father's name flashed across the screen and old instincts kicked in. I glanced. "Don't come to the family reunion. Your mother and I agree it's best to cut ties for now. Eric agrees. This is what's best for the family image." The words blurred. The room felt smaller, hotter. My face flushed. Patricia was asking something about Q3 revenue streams. I swallowed and answered on autopilot. "We're projecting a 17% increase." But inside, something was finally breaking free. I heard myself speak, voice eerily steady, as my world quietly fractured. "If you'll all turn to page 4 of your packets." I guided the room through projected forecasts and deal contingencies with practiced precision years. Under my parents' hypercritical gaze had conditioned me well. No one in that conference room knew that beneath the professional polish, I was silently processing the emotional gut punch of being formally cut off by my family, by text. 45 minutes later, the meeting wrapped successfully. Clients shook hands, partners smiled. As the room thinned out, Patricia paused beside my chair. "Excellent work, Natalie. The Wallace team is thrilled with your leadership." "Thank you," I said, voice even. She narrowed her eyes slightly. "Are you all right? You look a bit pale." "Just a headache," I lied. "I'll take something for it." Once alone, I walked straight to the women's restroom, locked a stall, and gave myself 3 minutes to break. Silent tears tracked my foundation as memories surfaced. My 5th birthday, missed for a cross-development gala. High school graduation cut short so they could attend Eric's college alumni banquet. Law school, where they showed up for photos, then left for a benefit dinner. Minute 4. I wiped my cheeks, retouched my lipstick, and walked back to my office. I had a decision to make. I stared at the text from my father again. "Don't come to the family reunion. We're cutting ties." Eric agrees. So sterile. So calculated. Not even a call. Just words on a screen after 36 years of trying to matter. My finger hovered over the keyboard. I typed, "After everything I've done, how dare you deleted it? This is about control, not family." Deleted that too. In the end, I wrote just one word. Understood. It felt cold but complete. What more could I say? I hit send, then dialed Marcus. "They've officially cut me off," I said when he picked up. Dad texted me during the Wallace meeting. "Texted you?" He echoed, stunned. "God, Natalie, It's clarifying, actually, I said, slowly, surprising even myself. No more ambiguity. No more auditions for love. I'm leaving school early, he said. I'll meet you at home. No, finish your day. I'm okay, really, but I do need to talk to you tonight. About the loan. The $1.5 million loan I had co-signed for 3 years ago. The last thread tethering me to Cross Development. Over lunch, I began researching my legal options. As co-signer, I'd assumed risk without rights, without say, but not for much longer. If Cross Development defaulted, my own financial future would be at serious risk. After my father's latest text, keeping my name tied to their loan felt reckless, if not outright self-destructive. I called Jennifer Morales, my personal attorney in Chicago. They've been making payments, she confirmed after reviewing the records. But as co-signer, you're still fully liable for the entire $1.5 million if anything goes wrong. She paused. Given the family situation you've described, removing yourself would be wise. What's the process? I asked. We'd notify the lender that you're withdrawing your guarantee. Your father would need to either pay off the loan, refinance under his name, or provide alternative collateral. And if he refuses, he wouldn't have many options, she said. But yes, this could cause major operational issues for Cross Development. I sat with that for a moment. My father's cold dismissal echoed in my mind. The years of feeling like a tolerated inconvenience rather than a daughter. Then I thought of Marcus, waiting at home, his love steady, unconditional. Draft the paperwork, I said finally. I'll sign tomorrow. That night, over homemade pasta and quiet music, I explained it all to Marcus. Are you sure? He asked, not out of doubt, but concern. This is a big move. They already severed ties, I said. This just makes it official. They might see it as retaliation. I see it as self-preservation. I met his eyes. Why should I stay financially entangled with people who are ashamed of me? He nodded. Then I'm with you. All the way. That night I slept better than I had in years. A full, restful sleep. The kind that only comes when you finally set down a burden so old you forgot what life felt like without it. The next morning, I walked into Jennifer's office and signed the papers. It'll take about 24 hours for the bank to process, she said, handing me the final form. You sure about this? I thought of the text, of the reunion I was never invited to, of the clarity that followed. I've never been more certain, I said, and I meant it. That afternoon, in a glass-walled conference room at the bank, I sat across from Bradley Norton, the loan officer, who had approved the original deal. His expression stayed carefully neutral as I explained why I was removing myself. Ms. Cross, removing yourself as guarantor is certainly your right, Bradley said, adjusting his already perfectly straight tie. However, I should inform you, this action triggers several clauses in the loan agreement. He tapped the folder. Cross Development will have 30 days to provide additional collateral or face accelerated repayment terms. I understand, I replied, keeping my tone even. Have there been any issues with payments so far? Bradley scanned the document. No payments have been consistent, but your personal guarantee was instrumental in securing the favorable interest rate. Jennifer Morales stepped in. My client's decision is final. Please process the release. As Bradley left to make copies, I gazed out the window at the Chicago skyline. Just a few blocks away stood the regional office of Cross Development, a glass tower, with my family's name etched in silver across its facade. A building I had never set foot in. Despite all my credentials, all my work, I was never invited to be part of it. You're doing the right thing, Jennifer said gently, breaking the silence. I've reviewed their numbers. Cross Development is stable. This won't bankrupt them. It'll inconvenience them. Your father will just need to back it with other business assets. Then, why did he need me at all? I asked. Your credit score gave them a much better rate, she said, then hesitated. And, based on timing, I suspect your father had over-leveraged in other areas. Your signature let him avoid disclosing those liabilities. It shouldn't have hurt, not after everything else. But it did. I wasn't needed as a daughter. I was needed as leverage. Bradley returned with the final documents. I read through every word, each clause and contingency. Years of legal training gave me the armor I needed now. Then I reached the final page. I paused, pen hovering. A memory surfaced my father's office 3 years earlier. He'd slid the papers across his mahogany desk, handed me a heavy gold pen. "Just a formality, Natalie," he'd said. "Family helps family. Though if you'd joined the firm like we hoped, this wouldn't be necessary." Even his request for help came laced with condescension. I signed with steady, decisive strokes. Bradley nodded. "The bank will finalize this today. Your family will be notified by tomorrow morning." "Thank you," I said, rising. Jennifer snapped her briefcase shut, and we walked out together into a city that finally felt like mine. In the elevator, a strange lightness settled over me. "Is it weird that this feels more final than the text my father sent?" I asked Jennifer. "Not at all," she replied. "You've taken back your power. That kind of choice sticks." Back at my office, I threw myself into work. The Wallace merger was in its final stages, and focusing on the details kept me from spiraling over how my family might react once they were notified. I stayed late ordering Thai food to my desk and reviewing equity terms until nearly midnight. Around 10, Marcus texted, "Everything." "Okay, yes," I replied. "Just finishing up. See you at home soon." When I finally stepped outside, Chicago's skyline shimmered against the deep night sky. The stars were faint behind the city lights, but I paused anyway, breathing in the cool air. For the first time in my adult life, I felt fully independent, professionally secure, emotionally anchored, and entirely untethered from the expectations of the Cross family legacy. It was both terrifying and freeing. At home, Marcus had waited up for me, 2 wine glasses on the coffee table, jazz playing low. "How do you feel?" he asked, helping me out of my heels. "Lighter," I said honestly, "and a little scared." "They'll find out tomorrow," he said, wrapping an arm around me. "Whatever comes, we'll deal with it. Together." I fell asleep beside him, my dreams for the first time in years unburdened. The bank's notification would hit my father's desk by 9:00 a.m. Eastern, which meant 8:00 a.m. in Chicago. I scheduled my morning so I'd be immersed in client calls when the fallout began. At 7:30 a.m., I was already reviewing red lines on a licensing clause when my phone buzzed. Eric's name lit up the screen. I let it go to voicemail. At 7:45, my mother called. Then, my father. I silenced my phone and stepped into my first meeting. By noon, I had 17 missed calls. By the time I took lunch, the notifications were a wall of noise. 28 missed calls, 43 texts, 17 voicemails. Father, mother, Eric, unknown numbers. The moment the bank email landed, 9:17 a.m. Eastern, they must have erupted. I played the first voicemail. "Natalie, my father began voice taut. Call me immediately. What you've done is completely unacceptable. This jeopardizes everything we've built." The second message was my mother's Natalie. "What were you thinking? Your father is beside himself. If you've ever had to choose peace over approval, hit subscribe and stick around to see what Natalie does next. The bank is requesting additional collateral by the end of the month. You need to fix this immediately." The third voicemail. From Eric, Natalie. "What the hell, Dad's losing it. Call me back." The fourth was from an unfamiliar number. "Ms. Cross. This is Edward Pennington, accountant for Cross Development. This is regarding an urgent financial matter. Please return my call at your earliest convenience." I set my phone down beside my salad, strangely calm. For once, a cross-family crisis wasn't mine to solve. I hadn't just withdrawn from the loan, I'd stepped off the emotional hamster wheel entirely. My assistant, Kelsey, knocked lightly on my office door. "Natalie, there's a call on line 2. A man says he's your father's attorney, says it's extremely urgent." "Take a message, please," I said. "I have the Wallace contract review in 15 minutes." She hesitated. He was very persistent. I'm sure he was. But I'm prioritizing actual clients today. That afternoon, the calls kept coming. I sent them all to voicemail. Around 3 p.m., Alicia, a colleague from the mergers team, popped her head into my office. "There are 2 people in reception asking for you," she said cautiously. "An older couple. They're agitated." My stomach dipped. My parents? Want me to say you're in meetings all afternoon because you actually are? I took a breath. No. Tell security to escort them out. They don't have an appointment, and I have nothing to say to them right now. Alicia blinked, then nodded. You got it. 20 minutes later, she came back with an arched brow. Well, that was dramatic. Your dad threatened to call the managing partner. Security had to block him from the elevators. Embarrassment flared. Then, anger. I'm sorry they put you in that position. Don't apologize, she said firmly. Whatever's going on, you're handling it like a boss. Then softer. If you need anything, I've got your back. Thanks, Alicia. By 5 o'clock, the managing partner, James Caldwell, called me in. As I stepped into his office, he looked up from his desk. Natalie, your father says you're avoiding his calls about an urgent business matter. I am, I replied, calmly and honestly. It's a personal matter that has no bearing on my work here, I said, meeting James Caldwell's gaze. He studied me for a beat. He mentioned something about a loan situation. A personal financial decision I made, I replied. One that affects his business, not this firm. James leaned back in his chair. He was rather insistent about speaking with you. I'm sure he was, I said coolly. But with respect, my focus right now is on finalizing the Wallace merger. That's where my professional energy belongs. He nodded slowly. Agreed. The Wallace merger is our top priority. Your father also mentioned you'd be attending the family reunion next weekend. Perhaps that's a better time to resolve things, so they were still pretending I'd be there. I won't be attending any reunion, James, I said evenly, and my father knows that. Something in my voice must have made it clear the conversation was over. I see, he said. Well, Natalie, your performance here is what matters to us, and it's exceptional. Thank you, I said then. Left his office. My phone buzzed the moment I stepped into the hallway. Eric. This time, I answered. What the actual hell, Natalie? He snapped. Do you even realize what you've done? I removed myself from a loan I should never have been asked to co-sign. I replied calmly, especially after being told by text that I'm no longer part of this family. That's not? Eric began, then hesitated. Dad didn't mean, yes, he did, I interrupted. And according to that message, you agreed with him. Silence. Then a soft, I never said that. It doesn't matter, Eric. This isn't about the reunion anymore. It's about 36 years of being used only when it benefits the family's bottom line. His voice tightened. The bank is demanding $2 million in collateral by month end. Dad's liquidating assets at a loss. That sounds like a cross-development problem, I said. I'm no longer involved. You know this is vindictive. No, I said coolly. Vindictive would be alerting the bank to the questionable timing of that loan, something Jennifer flagged. I'm simply protecting myself. Another pause. Dad wants to meet. I have nothing to say to him. He'll be in Chicago tomorrow. The Palmer House. Noon. I'll be working. Natalie, please. Just hear him out. I hesitated. Maybe a face-to-face conversation would give me the clarity or closure I hadn't been able to get through voicemails and silence. Fine. Noon, I told Eric. But I have a 1 o'clock client meeting I won't be missing. Thank you. He sounded genuinely relieved. And Natalie. For what it's worth, I never agreed with cutting you out. Not ever. I ended the call unsure whether to believe him. By day's end, I'd racked up 68 missed calls, 12 from the cross-development accountant alone, plus 3 emails from the family attorney and a text from my mother that simply read, "You've broken your father's heart." I shut down my computer, collected my things. Marcus had texted to say he'd grab takeout. The thought of his calm presence was the only thing anchoring me after the whirlwind of the day. As I stepped outside into the warm Chicago evening, my phone buzzed again. Cross-development. I hit decline. Tomorrow. Noon. Then it would be over. The Palmer House lobby gleamed with old-world grandeur chandeliers, marble ceilings painted like cathedrals. I arrived at 12:00 sharp, dressed in a tailored charcoal suit, and the pearl necklace Marcus gave me for our anniversary. My parents were already seated in the far corner. My father checked his watch. My mother stared into her tea. They hadn't noticed me yet, and I let myself watch them. They looked smaller. The intimidating shadows of my childhood had softened into aging humans. My father's hair grayer than I remembered. My mother's posture slightly stooped. I approached. "Hello." They looked up. My mother immediately summoned her performative smile. My father remained unreadable. "Natalie, darling." My mother reached out. I allowed her touch briefly, then took my seat. "I can stay 45 minutes, I said. "I have a meeting at 1. My father's jaw clenched. "This family emergency takes precedence over any client meeting." "Not for me," I replied calmly. "What did you want to discuss?" A waiter appeared. My father ordered coffee tea for my mother without asking. I requested sparkling water. "You've put us in an impossible position," he began after the waiter left. "The bank's demanding collateral we don't have in liquid form. We're selling assets at a loss." "That's unfortunate," I said evenly, meeting my father's gaze. "But it's a business problem, and business problems have business solutions. You have multiple properties that could be used as collateral." His jaw tightened. "They're already leveraged for other projects," he said, voice rising before he caught himself. He glanced around at nearby tables and lowered his tone. "Natalie, this is vindictive and childish." "Gerald," my mother said, touching his arm gently, "let's stay calm." She turned to me, adopting the polished, coaxing voice she usually reserved for managing donors at galas. "Natalie, sweetheart, we understand you were hurt by your father's message. It was poorly worded, sent in a moment of frustration. Of course, we don't want to cut ties." I kept my voice measured. "Really? Because I believe the exact words were, 'Don't try coming to the family reunion. Your mother and I have decided it's best we cut ties for now.' Eric agrees?" My mother's expression shifted, just slightly, but I caught it. "That's not exactly." It was clear my father cut in. "We've been skirting this for years. Your lifestyle, your career choices, they're your business. But they don't align with the image we're cultivating." My mother looked stunned. "Gerald, it's time for honesty, Lorraine," he said flatly. "Natalie has never fit the mold. Her relationship with that teacher, her insistence on practicing corporate law instead of joining the company, her constant challenges to our decisions, it's been a distraction. One we can't afford right now, especially with the Grant family and the governor showing interest in our projects." His bluntness hit hard, but after years of passive-aggressive digs and calculated silence, the honesty almost felt like relief. "So I'm bad for the brand," I said. "That's been obvious for years. But why bring me into the loan? Why use me financially if I'm such a liability?" He looked momentarily uncomfortable. "That was purely business. Your credit got us the rate we needed, which you've now lost because you decided to cut me out over text," I added. "We could have handled things more gradually if you hadn't reacted so impulsively," he replied. I let out a laugh, dry and sharp. 36 years of chasing your approval. There's nothing impulsive about finally being done." My mother leaned forward. "Natalie, you know we love you. We've always supported you." "Really?" When I asked. "When you scheduled over my academic award ceremony, when you left my law school graduation early to attend Eric's alumni dinner, when you dismissed Marcus for being just a teacher, or when you lied about the reunion," my mother flinched. My father's expression turned to stone. "We gave you every advantage," he said coldly. "The best schools, the right connections, opportunities most people dream of. You gave me things," I replied calmly, "but not love, not acceptance, and certainly not respect." The waiter returned with our drinks. An awkward, brittle silence settled over the table until he walked away. "What will it take?" my father finally asked, his voice shifting into negotiation mode. "To get you to reinstate your guarantee on the loan." "It's not happening," I said flatly. "I've removed myself from anything financially tied to Cross Development, and that decision is final." His face flushed red. "You would jeopardize this family's legacy out of spite." "Out of self-preservation," I corrected. "And the legacy will survive. The company is financially stable. This is a setback, not a collapse." My attorney confirmed that. His brows snapped upward. You discussed our private business with an outside attorney. My attorney, I said, who happened to notice something curious about the timing of that loan, how it conveniently aligned with other obligations you failed to disclose to the bank. My father's color drained. My mother looked between us, eyes narrowing in confusion. Gerald? What is she talking about? Before he could respond, Eric appeared at the table, tie askew and face flushed. Sorry I'm late. Traffic from O'Hare was a nightmare. Eric? My mother asked, clearly surprised. You didn't tell me Eric was joining us, she said, turning to my father. And in that moment, it clicked. He didn't tell her because he didn't invite him. Eric came on his own. I looked at my brother. Why are you here? Eric glanced toward our father, who was visibly seething. Then he sat down heavily beside me. Because this has gone far enough. The family's tearing apart over half-truths and control. He looked directly at me. Dad never consulted me about cutting you out. I found out the same time you did when Mom mentioned your reply at dinner. Don't be dramatic, Eric, my father snapped. We discussed the reunion guest list thoroughly, my father said, waving a hand as if the topic were beneath him. We agreed the focus should remain on legacy and the Grant connection. No? Eric interrupted. We talked about keeping the event small, sure, but you never once said Natalie was uninvited. It was implied, my father replied flatly. No, it wasn't, Eric said sharply, then turned to me. I never would have agreed to that, Nat. You have to know that. I searched his face. There was something real there. Guilt, frustration. Then why didn't you call me when you found out? I asked. Eric looked down at his hands. I should have. I got swept into damage control with the investors who were there. By the time I wrapped my head around it, you'd already pulled out of the loan. Speaking of which, my father cut in. We need to resolve this financial situation. Natalie, reinstate your guarantee, and we'll revisit these family concerns later. That's not why I'm here, Eric said firmly. I came because it's time to stop hiding things. Natalie deserves the truth. Eric! My father's tone turned sharp. A warning, but Eric didn't stop. Natalie, you need to know something about that loan. Dad didn't just use your credit to get a better rate. 3 years ago, Cross Development was in serious trouble. Eric, my father, snapped. No, Eric said, voice rising. The Harborview project was bleeding money. Permit delays, cost overruns, environmental complaints. The banks were circling. Without your guarantee, we were on the brink of collapse. My mother gasped, visibly shaken. Gerald, is that true? His face had flushed a deep, dangerous red. Business has its ups and downs. I managed it as I always do. You managed it by using Natalie, Eric said bitterly. The same sister you ignored, dismissed until she became useful. I sat frozen, the weight of it all pressing down. So when you asked me to co-sign, we weren't stable. We were at risk. Temporary cash flow issues, my father insisted. Every company faces them. Bad enough to need my name to avoid bankruptcy, I said quietly. Which I might have explained, he snapped, if you'd ever shown real interest in the family business. My father exploded. But no, you were too busy building your separate life, judging our values, bringing home unsuitable partners. Gerald, my mother interrupted, her face stricken. She looked genuinely horrified. Dad, stop, Eric said, leaning forward. This is exactly the issue. You only value Natalie when she's useful. Every other time you shut her out. My father stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the marble floor. I don't have to listen to this. Natalie, you have 24 hours to reinstate your guarantee, or I'll have our attorneys pursue every legal option for the damage you've done. Sit down. Dad, Eric said, his voice quiet but commanding. There's more. My father hesitated, unsettled by his tone. More? I echoed, turning to Eric. What do you mean? He reached into his briefcase and drew out a folder. After I found out what Dad did with the loan, I asked our new financial officer to review all personal guarantees linked to the company. Natalie, your signature appears on 2 other loans. My pulse kicked. That's impossible. I never signed anything else. Eric slid the documents across the table. An equipment loan from 2020 and a line of credit from 2021. I stared at the signature lines. At first glance, they resembled my handwriting. But I knew my signature. These were not mine. "These are forged," I said, my voice sharp. I looked up straight at my father. "You forged my name." He didn't look at me. My mother had gone sheet white. "Gerald," she whispered, "tell me you didn't." "It was necessary," he muttered. "Temporary measures during the pandemic. The business needed stability. Everything's been paid." "It's fraud," I said coldly. "Criminal fraud." My legal instincts kicked in. Calculating liability, exposure, intent. Eric continued. "That's why removing your name from the Wallace loan was smart. I've already contacted our attorneys to handle these other two cases quietly. We'll keep law enforcement out of it if we act fast." My father glared. "You went behind my back." "I did what was right," Eric said. "Something I should have done for Natalie years ago." I looked at him stunned. "Why now?" He held my gaze. "Because I've been complicit. I benefited from the favoritism." I stayed silent. "But now? With Caroline pregnant, I'm thinking about the kind of family legacy I want to build." "Not this," Eric said quietly. "Not what Dad's created." My father stood again, this time grabbing his coat with sharp, jerky movements. "This meeting is over," he said. "Natalie, reinstate your guarantee or face the consequences." "Eric, we'll deal with your betrayal when we're back in Boston." My mother rose hesitant. "Gerald, maybe we should... Now, Lorraine?" She glanced back at me with a conflicted expression, then followed him without another word. As they walked away, for the first time, I saw just how much smaller my father seemed. The commanding presence I had feared my whole life, reduced to a man whose lies had finally caught up with him. Eric and I sat in silence. "I'm sorry," he finally said. "For all of it. For not being the brother you deserved." I looked at him closely. This sibling I'd once written off as our father's shadow. "Why now? Eric, why stand up now?" He exhaled. "Becoming a father changes you. Makes you think about the legacy you're creating. I don't want my child growing up in a family that operates on fear and performance. And," he paused, "I miss my sister. For the first time in years, something real passed between us." "I missed you too," I said softly. My phone buzzed a meeting reminder. 15 minutes. I grabbed my purse, still absorbing everything I'd learned. "What will you do?" Eric asked. "About the loan, nothing. It stays void. About the forged documents, Jennifer will review it all before I decide." I stood. "And about family?" I hesitated. "I'm not sure yet." Eric nodded. "That's fair. More than fair." As I walked out of the Palmer house, I felt surprisingly light. The confrontation hadn't gone as I expected, but it had revealed everything I needed. The Cross family business, like the Cross family itself, was built on polished surfaces, hiding tangled truths. And for once, I was relieved to be standing outside of it. 3 months later, in my Chicago apartment, I watched the sun dip below the skyline in pink and gold. Life had shifted in ways I never saw coming when I first read that text from my father. The aftermath had been swift. He'd pursued legal action, then backed off once his attorneys realized the risk tied to forged documents. Cross Development secured new financing at a higher rate, the cost of doing business without my name. And a week after that meeting, my mother called. Her voice uncharacteristically unpolished. "Natalie." Her voice had trembled slightly. "I want you to know I had no idea about the other loans. About any of it." "I believe you," I'd said. And I meant it. My mother had always been more concerned with maintaining appearances than understanding the business itself. The paperwork, the legalities, those had been my father's domain. "Your father and I," she had paused, "we're taking some time apart. I'm staying with my sister in Connecticut." That surprised me. In all my life, I had never seen Lorraine Cross question Gerald, let alone leave him even temporarily. "I'm sorry," I said softly. "And I meant that too." "Don't be. It's long overdue," she sighed. "I've been thinking about what you said. About how we didn't support you." "I didn't. I was so focused on keeping our place in the world, I never saw what it cost you." It wasn't exactly an apology, but it was more self-awareness than I'd ever heard from her. Eric had kept in touch since that day at the Palmer house. Our conversations were slow, at first heavy, with the weight of years we couldn't get back. But gradually, we started building something new, something real. When he and Caroline visited Chicago last month, they invited Marcus and me to dinner. It was easy, surprisingly warm. Later that evening, Eric told me Caroline thinks you're brilliant, says I'm lucky to have such a formidable sister. Professionally, everything was shifting too. The Wallace merger had been a landmark success, and Patricia formally placed me on the early partnership track. My name was now listed on the firm's website, Natalie Cross Senior Associate, partnership track. But the real transformation was internal. Weekly sessions with Dr. Levine, my therapist, helped me unpack a lifetime of impossible standards and emotional hunger disguised as ambition. You can't change your past, she'd said last session, but you can change how it shapes your future. So what do you want that future to look like? I found my answer the weekend before, when Marcus took me to Lake Michigan at sunset. With the waves gently lapping at the shore, he knelt in the sand and opened a velvet box. Natalie Cross, he said, his voice steady, his hands shaking. You're the strongest, most brilliant person I've ever known. Will you marry me? Looking at this kind, grounded man who saw all of me, the answer was easy. Yes, absolutely. The ring sparkled in the fading amber light as I glanced down at my phone. A text from Eric popped up confirming he'd be at our engagement dinner next week. My mother had sent flowers after I called her with the news. The note tucked inside simply read, I'd love to be there if you want me. As for my father's silence, but oddly, that silence felt like its own kind of peace. The doorbell rang, breaking my thoughts. Marcus was back from grocery shopping, arms full and smiling. He was making his famous mushroom risotto to celebrate the day's second milestone. The partnership committee had officially scheduled my interview. Hey, he said, stepping inside. You look thoughtful. Just reflecting, I said, taking a bag from him. It's been quite a year. Regrets, he asked, unpacking produce on the counter. I paused, really thinking. The fracture with my family had been painful. The revelations about the business, devastating. But here in my own home beside the man who chose me exactly as I was, I felt a freedom I'd never known growing up. No, I said softly. No regrets. Just clarity. Later, we sat on the balcony, wine glasses in hand, the city lights flickering below. Have you thought about inviting your dad to the wedding? Marcus asked. I looked out at the skyline. Not sure yet, I admitted. Part of me wants to. Part of me wonders if that's just another old habit. Whatever you choose, Marcus said gently, I'm with you. Your family is whoever you choose now. That truth settled deep. Family wasn't DNA. It was love, respect, support. It was Marcus, Alicia, even the new bond forming with Eric. And for the first time, I was no longer that desperate daughter chasing approval. I was finally home. If you followed my story, I'd love to hear from you. What would you have done in my shoes? Drop a comment below. I'm still learning, still growing. Your words matter. If you've ever walked away from toxic expectations, tell me how you found peace. And if you're still stuck between duty and self-worth, please remember this. You are not selfish for choosing your sanity. You are not wrong for wanting love without conditions. Support yourself the way you'd support someone you love and keep building the life you deserve. I promise it's worth it. Every single step.